Black like me. Black like me. Black like me.
You're listening to Black Like Me with Dr. Alex G., a podcast that invites you to experience the world through the perspective of one black man, one conversation, one story, or even one rant at a time. Here's Dr. G.
Hey, good people. Welcome back to another exciting episode of Black Like Me with Dr. Alex G. We are in the midst of it. We are in season 12. I cannot believe that we have 200 plus episodes that are up. People have listened in over 100 different countries. We have listeners and subscribers in every state of the union, and we're just keeping this thing going. So I'm really excited about this series that I have bundled. This is part of a countdown to the grand opening for the Center for Black Excellence in Culture, theblackcenter.org. And this is phenomenal work, and I've talked about it already. You can listen to some of the previous episodes where I describe this in great detail. And we are building something that's never been built in the state of Wisconsin or even in the Midwest. That this is an amazing place where we are using art and technology and culture and cultural celebrations and intergenerational programming in order to prove that we can enhance and lengthen Black lives by having safe space to be ourselves and celebrate ourselves in order to really build a thriving community where we belong, and the benefit of which will be felt throughout the entire community. And on top of that, our focus is to measure this data so that we can prove our claims that being together and celebrating culture has health benefits. And so we're going to be talking to different people who have helped to design this work, who will be benefiting from this work. But within this season or this series, I want to talk with folks who are non-Black allies, not so much about the specific nature of their individual work. Of course, we're going to touch upon that, but just as individuals, how the process of becoming allies and friends with us in a very meaningful way has really taken place. And so I have two special guests. One is Amanda White, who is my fundraising consultant. She's been in the business of fundraising for over 25 years. She's run and operated her own consulting company, Amanda White Consulting, for 13 years. And she helps nonprofits and mission-driven organizations build stronger fundraising strategies, raise money more effectively, and bring important community initiatives to life. I cannot believe this, but because of working with Amanda, I actually enjoy fundraising. Oh my gosh, did I just say that? I actually do. But Amanda has been a committed ally and partner in bringing her practical expertise and real passion for supporting this kind of work that uplifts Black communities to the table. And I'm so fortunate to have her here on the show today, but more importantly, as a part of our team and as a friend. Sitting next to her is the former Dane County executive, Mr. Rick Phelps. Rick and I have moved in the same circles for 35 plus years. He put together policy years ago that helped to establish Nehemiah, my first nonprofit that I established. He's been a longtime public servant in Wisconsin with a strong focus on advocacy for children's rights and children legal protections. Amazing, groundbreaking protections that I just assumed existed everywhere, including in Wisconsin, but many of these protections did not exist. And Rick and his vision and his team have helped that to come to pass. One of the things that I often ask him about is that there is an association of county executives. For example, there are 70 plus counties in Wisconsin. Imagine all the counties in all 50 states becoming an association. Rick chaired the board of that group, which meant he provided leadership for all the county executives around the country. I just think that piece is just really, really meaningful. He's been a very thoughtful ally and partner to the Center for Black Excellence in Culture. I've learned a lot personally from him about leadership, about what it means to be diplomatic, about what it means to harness my emotions and use them positively. And he's taught me how to navigate predominantly white spaces, not just as a Black influencer, but as an influencer who happens to be Black. He taught me skills that would help anyone who wants to do this kind of work. But he has brought his skills and his strength to bear on this project, and he came out of retirement so that he could help me do this. Amanda, Rick, welcome to Black Like Me podcast. How are you two doing today?
Doing great, Reverend G. Thanks for the nice words.
Oh, I mean it.
Thanks for the
mean
invitation.
It. Sure. Amanda, how are you feeling?
I'm great. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you, Alex.
Now, you two have impressive resumes, and we know this, and I have no problem shouting you out. But what's really wonderful is how we've developed a rapport through this process. And I think that piece is very important. The purpose of my wanting to talk about my non-Black allies, particularly white allies, because if we build something like this and we don't build meaningful bridges, then in some ways we will have failed. And I believe that white people want to believe that we can build bridges, and I know that Black people do. But I have to tell you, cross-cultural relationships aren't new for me. I practice them at Nehemiah, I practice them at the church. It's part of my family, it's just part of my thing. But typically it's been with people that typically I pastor or employ. It's really different to build it with folks who have built their expertise in other areas. And so it's really important for me just to talk with you about how you became really connected to this process. Rick, I met you because our mutual friend, Jim Bauer, said, there's this guy. Well, I met you because you were chairing a committee looking at the future of the Expo Center. Yeah. Here in Madison, Wisconsin, we have our Coliseum Expo Center. We were looking at how that project could be reimagined. And who's who of Dane County was there. And I was impressed with the way you just held court with all those people. Rick, you were unflappable. You could get a lot out of us, but you made sure we stayed on the agenda. And I just thought, Rick Phelps is no joke. I know he was a county exec, but I didn't know that he really held court like this. And that's really how we met personally. Amanda, I think it was Al Fish and others who said, if you're going to do this project, you're going to need a fundraising consultant. Mm-hmm. And I didn't want to pay for a fundraising consultant, particularly when I found that a fundraising consultant doesn't necessarily raise the money, but facilitates it. So I just thought, well, hell, why am I paying her? And I got to still go out here and raise money. And so I
knew that in our first meeting too, Alex.
I came in with my arms all crossed. Her last name was White. And she was sitting there. And I was like, this does not make any sense. She must be related to somebody. They're trying to make me spend this money. And then as we started working together and as you began to put together the systems of what it takes to fundraise, it did a couple of things. And I'm going to breathe in just a moment. It helped me to understand what Rick Phelps had been asking when this original vision was tied to another organization. Rick kept saying, who's managing the list? And I kept thinking, what list is Rick talking about? And he was dogmatic about it. Who's managing the list? Where did the list go? Well, because no one managed the list, people thought that they were donating, and it was just some confusion, but I understood it was database and how do we follow up. But I didn't know. I just thought you just wrote about 5 really good fundraising letters and the money would come. Mm-hmm. But I look back and just think about how you two have become personal friends. And so I just want to set that up because I want people who listen to understand that working together on common goals is one of the best way to bridge any gaps that you have. I just remember the first time meeting you all. Now, Amanda, you said you knew I felt that. Was it something I said or did I just look like it?
No, it was what you didn't say. You didn't say like 2 words to me. And I thought,
sorry, Amanda.
My goodness, I don't know about this. But it was such an incredible project that I was not going to let you say no, Alex.
Oh, my goodness. And so, Amanda, that was many years ago because, let's see, our first meeting was before COVID, right? Had we met in person?
We did not. So yeah, my first meeting with the group was like 2018 or 2019, but wow. I don't think you were in that meeting. But but we
I was in the corner kicking the wall.
We met in early 2021.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so how does one become interested in fundraising as a professional consultant? It's enough to fundraise or be responsible for it for one agency. Where did that start for you?
Oh, that's a great question. I'm one of the rare people, but now you, Alex, can say it too. I love fundraising. And when done well,
Sure.
you can achieve such wonderful dreams and
Absolutely.
make authentic, true relationships with the people who are out there in the community who want to do good and they want to hear about your project or your dream. And so when you foster those relationships in the right way, in a healthy way, in an authentic way, they hear your story in a way that speaks from your heart. It's a beautiful process of
Yes,
people coming
yes.
together, helping each other.
Yes. When you first heard us talk about needing to raise $30-40 billion in Madison, Wisconsin, at that particular time, we can be honest now because we've raised all the money that we need for construction.
Yeah.
We still need money for programs, people. We still need money for programs. And you want to be on this train. You don't want to miss
That's
this one.
right.
Did you
Good job,
think,
Amanda. Good
That's
job.
right.
Did you think we were crazy, Amanda, when we said that?
No, not
far-fetched?
not crazy, but I thought, oh my goodness, no, brand new organization, no donor base, like brand new group of people coming together. I thought,
right.
okay, let's do this, let's give it a try, and I mean, it really was. It really was magic. I mean, it really
Yes,
was the right people coming together. Alex, your leadership, your magic that you bring to the table, the way you connect with people, the community really got on board. And it was, we know, Rick, Alex, you guys know, it was a ton of work.
Yes, it was. I had no idea.
It was not easy.
I had no idea.
But I think when it's the right project, the right time, and the
Sure.
right leadership, and the right leader,
Right.
you can really make things happen.
So Rick and Amanda, when you two came on the scene, Rick, I would say particularly during your tenure of county executive, but Amanda, you've been in this work for 25 years. Do you remember when there were sort of gatekeepers that if you were going to launch a capital campaign, I don't know who the gatekeepers were, but someone needed to nod, the powers that be needed to nod. Having gone through this process and having seen 2 or 3 or 4 different organizations come into the fundraising orbit at the same time, I have a deeper appreciation for the process, but with all that was happening in the world for Centro Hispano, for the Black Hub, for One City, and for the Center, all focusing on Black and brown people and marginalized people, it was absolutely the right time to do it. But if those powers that be had been in power, I don't know that they would have given a nod to each of us being Black and brown-led organizations, because the history has been, maybe the city has appetite for 1, maybe 2, but we can't let Karen, Ruben, Alex, and Kaleem all jump out there asking the same people for the same money. And so I felt like that was sort of providential that we didn't have to go to someone for that particular nod. Did that process just go away, or did we bypass it?
I think the community has kind of moved beyond that process. It came from a desire to sort of time campaigns so that it wasn't all the asks at once. However, I think what's happening right now in Madison and actually across the country is a move to community-centric fundraising, which means that it's not as donor-centric. It's really focused on community leadership, and the communities that are being served. And it's a really important change and transition that's happening, that's needed to happen for a while. And we're seeing so many people on both sides of the table, nonprofit and philanthropists, really embracing this idea of being very community-centered.
If I could just put a footnote in, Alex, so I've been doing this 50, 60 years, right?
Wow.
Of some version of activism and fundraising, often a part of it. There was never a person you had to get clearance from. There's no group you had to get clearance from. You were made aware that United Way is doing X, Y, and Z, and did you know these 3 other capital projects have just launched? But I never agreed to following any rules by anybody else in the community. So that really, you could get some discouragement, but nobody had the authority to tell you when to go and not go. So when we came into the Black Center project together, that was an issue that came to mind, I think, for you and others. But it wasn't really that issue that we had to deal with. It was more the issue of you get one black project and you're asking to deal with all that's it, pick one.
Right.
And
That's been the history.
From day one, you and the other leadership in the community were spectacular at not allowing that competition to take place.
Exactly.
And we just kept coming back to them. Wait, that's not the same project we have. You got to judge the project on the merits.
Yes.
And we weren't sure that the community was up to that challenge, but we never took the bait of attacking one of the other projects.
Absolutely.
It never was allowed.
Absolutely.
And what came out the other end was all the projects got funded.
Yes.
And that's testimonial to the leadership, but it's also a testimonial to the community when they got it finally, and then they backed off and identified the projects they cared about.
Sure.
Yeah.
Now, Rick, you and I have been friends for years, and so we have this rule that we speak honestly to and about each other. So what I'm about to say is not hyperbole. This really has taken place. You have an uncanny sense of political timing and of movement. It's really,
Thank you.
It's very impeccable. And it's part of what drew me to wanting to learn from you. I remember when we first started meeting, you asked me, and this is before the censure started, we were really talking about some justified anger work.
Right.
And you asked me if I had any political aspirations. And Rick, about 20 years ago, I did. I had deep political, oh my gosh, yes. Because the real major black political figures who I studied or admired were also pastors. So whether it was Abernathy or King or Jackson, like these folks got their leadership in black church and black community. So it was always in the back of my mind. So I don't think you understand how tempting it was when you asked me that question, because I was thinking, I've pastored a long time. I've done nonprofit work for almost 30 years. Maybe it's time to do something different. So that was very tempting. When COVID happened and then George Floyd was murdered, people that are listening, they all know what happened. And I just said to myself, any discussions about a Center for Black Excellence or an African American Center for Cultural Advancement, we had these different iterations of names. I just assumed that it was finished. I really started focusing on how do I keep Nehemiah, and this is what those of you who are listening, it's my first nonprofit that I've been running at that point for about 30 years, it and the church going. I remember you reached out to me one day and you said, Alex, I know this probably isn't the right kind of timing, but there's a lot of stuff going on in the world. And I think we need to wake our white political leaders up. And I think we need to put your center back on the docket. And I just thought, we don't even know if we're coming out of we were just entering into COVID quarantines and quarantine. Right, that's right. And so I couldn't imagine. I was having trouble imagining a world after that. But how are we going to raise money and talk about this if we can't even meet or gather? But you said that to me, and you, to quote Belushi and Aykroyd from the Blues Brothers, you said it's time to put the band back together. And we got people together, and we did our first presentation, so quasi fundraising, because we couldn't ask for money, with the board of the Chamber of Commerce. That was a huge step, because this was all being done virtually. People were sitting in their kitchens and dining rooms listening, and we were the only group that they allowed to present to them. But Rick, that happened because you pinged me and said, put your boots back on. I know that we've gone silent on this, but it's time to move this ahead. There are things happening in the world. And I hadn't connected the dots. To me, COVID and then George Floyd, those are big things, but they weren't necessarily interrelated for me.
Yeah.
But as time would tell, it would become very interrelated. And so I just want to say, one, I appreciate that sensitivity, but that was the boost and push that really allowed us to get to this point, Rick.
Well, I appreciate that, Reverend G. And I think on my mind at the time, I was very concerned that everybody felt the need to go silent. But
yes,
if this was a big dream.
Yes.
About leading with a cultural center, which is, who's ever done that, right?
Right.
But the problem is that people didn't understand what the cultural aspect was, and most people thought, that's pictures on a wall in an art museum, and then you go look at them. Which means that if any organization in that silent time had said, we're going to put a wing on our community center and we're going to put black art in it, the dream is dead.
You're absolutely right.
It would be, when we announce something, it would sound like a redundancy. We spend our whole time describing why. No, that's not a duplication of what you just heard about that wing. So we had to be first.
Yes.
And we had to be big, and we had to talk culture.
And you were dogmatic about that. You rode me on that, young man.
But you don't need much teaching of anything, Alex. You're a natural politician and gifted.
But I didn't understand the context. Like, I knew that our idea was good, but you were thinking down the road. Like what if one of the other well-known organizations just said, and in light of what's happening in the world, as you mentioned, let's dedicate a wing to Black excellence in Madison, Dane County, Wisconsin. It was over. I was never thinking that. That never crossed my mind. And so when you said it, it made sense. And then I remember you kept saying, and Amanda, I think this is around the time you joined, Rick was like, we've been radio silent. The community hasn't heard anything from us. We need to say something. We need to do something. We need to say what we're doing. I was like, I was just thinking to myself, we got time. Let's get our plan together. But no, you were really dogmatic. And I remember when the hub announced, like we were planning on announcing, and they announced like a week before us, a few people thought, this is it. We should have gotten out first. Now, and the head of that, Ruben Anthony, is a good friend of mine, and we fundraised together and still work together. They actually had a year on us because they'd gotten money from the county to put a planning team. So they really had a year on us. But we ended up probably going public with our ideas maybe 3 weeks or a month later. But you did not rest, Mr. Phelps, until we got something announced. Looking back in hindsight, I understand it. But at the moment, I don't think I fully appreciated the need to do that. But looking back, I realized that that's how your business, timing, and political savvy really helped our team.
It's it was like there's a physical space almost for Black culture, art, and there's only one space in the community. We must claim that space right away. And once it's claimed, we're fine. Then our time opens up and we have some time to work with. But if we don't claim that space, it could end instantly.
Wow. One of the things that our friend Jim Bauer says is, if any one of us were not around the table, Rick, if you weren't, Amanda, if you weren't, if Al weren't, or Betty or Francis or Neil or others were really, the Hebing Group or Zebra Dog, this would have been a completely different project. And so just reflecting back on the intensity of the moment, we knew that something serious was going on, but I don't think we realized how big it was. And so, There's so much uncertainty in the world right now, but I love that sitting down right here in front of this mic and letting the hard truths rumble out of my heart and off my chest is as certain as it ever was. When I reflect back on all of the seasons that we dropped here at Black Like Me podcast, each of them has had a special purpose, a one-of-a-kind lineup of guests, and its own unique field. I also think about the thread that binds them all together. What we do here at Black Like Me is unique. I don't have another space that feels just like this, where I can really speak from my unique perspective. And the guests who have on the show remark that these interviews they do here are unlike any others that they've done in other places. Sure, nobody else does Black Icebreakers, but that's only part of it. We have created a truly unique space here where honest conversations about the thoughts, the ideas, the policies that affect Black people and that Black people care deeply about. And you know what? It isn't easy. And I don't do this all alone. I have an incredible team that has steadily grown over the years, and each person that joins adds another asset to what we can do here. And all of you that support us on Patreon, my people, my people, my people. We simply would not be able to do what we do or get what we have gotten without you. So as we look to even bigger and better things in the coming season, please help support the show right now by clicking the link to Patreon in the show notes and join the community of people supporting this unique and provocative space.
in the world that we're living in, where there's so much attack on our perspectives, our history, our bodies, and our lives and contributions, aren't you glad you have a place where you can still hear powerful, exhilarating, intellectual Black thought like you do? I enjoy it. And so if you do too, share the good news, tell friends, click that Patreon link now. Thank you so much for your support of Black Like Me podcast with Dr. Alex G.
So let me ask, when you first became involved in the work, was there a moment or an experience that made you realize that allyship is really important and it's more than just a belief, it's got to become a commitment? And I would love for you to share that with our listeners, if there's a moment you can remember. And if not, it's okay, but I would love if there's a moment.
I have a very specific memory about that. I had a meeting with Jim Bauer earlier about the space, the land.
Right.
And because Jim, I had started a process to change the Capital East District, the East Washington area.
Right.
And Jim was very involved in that. I was kind of on his mind for maybe a player in
Yes.
your world. And when he first talked to me, and eventually then we went and met with you, and then
Sure.
you further defined what was going on for me. But I thought at first he was talking about a community center. And I said, we're at a coffee shop, right? And I'm going, I thought he wanted some advice on a community center, and that's fine. I'm retired, completely happy. And it's like about 30, he said something, and I went, oh my gosh, this isn't a community center, which are good places that I wasn't going to get out of retirement to help create one. This is a cultural center. Literally 30 seconds, and I was all on board. I was just, it was a clarion ring. I could hear it.
Wow.
And then when we talked about the amount of money, which is lower than we actually raised when we first talked about it by quite a bit, but I thought, actually that also has a ring. And Reverend G can do this because of his unique skills. I'm in. And it was 30 seconds. Wow. And I went from, no, can't help you, and relieved. I was feeling relief that I couldn't help. And then all of a sudden, bang, I am in. And it was hard, but it was a wonderful experience. 8 years.
Yes, yes. Amanda, how about you? Do you remember?
Yeah. Well, I've done this work in the nonprofit community for many years. Mm-hmm. And so for me, right away, this seemed like a special project with incredible leaders who were coming on board. And it was absolutely something that I wanted to get on board with. And, I have worked with other leaders of color in the community and been so fortunate to do that. I have read the Race to Equity report. I understood that in our community, we had some real challenges with equity that needed to be addressed. And so I felt really fortunate to have the opportunity to be a small part of this project. But I think the moment that it was really a clarifying moment for me, Alex, is, you and I had the great, wonderful opportunity to meet with you once a week for like 5 years, right?
and I don't do that.
So I had a chance I think I learned so much from you as well. And one of the things that really stuck with me is you had said, I think I asked you how a donor meeting went. You were going to their house to just meet with them, tell them about the project. And you said, well, Amanda, the meeting went fine, but on my way up the sidewalk to their house, I can't remember if it was a neighbor or somebody working on the house next door, but somebody came up to you and said, oh, hey, excuse me, can I help you? What are you doing here? And you had to very calmly tell them what you were doing. And then, of course, the donor came out and was like, no, he's with me. It's fine. You hear about these stories sometimes happening, but to hear that from someone that, I really cared about and respected so much, and to hear that story, I thought, this project this is going to be a game changer for our community, and it cannot come too soon. That we absolutely have to make a change here in one of the places that unfortunately has some of the worst equity challenges in the country.
Right.
We need to make change.
And Amanda, that was the first. It's funny, we were talking about this off air. I have a clear memory of exactly when and where that was. I arrived before you did. It was a real nice community, and I arrived before you did. We were both at the meeting, and it was older donors. And I got there early, and you're right, someone was working on the lawn, and taking it upon themselves to also be security and want to know what I was doing there, who I was there to see. And you're right, the people who live there had to come in and say, it's all right, he's with me. And I got to tell you, I put a little note in here for myself that what really helped you all to become friends, not just allies, because allies still sounds like a little political, like you can do it at work, then you go home and take your hat off, and then you just keep on in your own little comfortable world. But you couldn't deny that, because that energy was still on me, and I had to shake it, because I had to sit down and ask these people for $250,000, and so, or more. And so I had to quickly shake what the yard guy was saying to me, because it could get in my way, or I could think, well, at least I'm not working in the yard. You know, like, but even as, and this is going to sound elitist, but I'm saying, even the yard tender, the lawn keeper, felt that they had the right. Didn't matter that I had, you know, a doctorate or been an author, or I was in the midst of raising all this money, but the fact that I got to process it with you that day kept this from being so isolating, because so many times you do it and you think, did I read that wrong? I mean, is it what you're supposed to ask, or, you know, am I being too sensitive? And it's really the second guessing of oneself that makes this so insidious. It's not that someone's going to come out the yard and call me a bad word, or what's your kind doing here, but it's what's implied in the questioning. Because I wasn't wearing a running, a jogging suit. I had a suit on, I had a briefcase, I had my materials, I was ready to do my presentation. But I think that there are so many places where people got to see that. I remember coming out of a fundraising meeting once with Al Fish, and he was there and heard and felt everything. And then we walked outside, he said, "What the bleep was that?" And I said, "Al," and it was calm and muted because you were there. Imagine what it's like when you're not there. So the fact that people got to see some of this through the eyes of someone who they trusted. It wasn't like, okay, is Alex like playing the race card? Is he being overly sensitive? I think to be able to say this is what happened, and you guys believed us every time and didn't try to talk us out of it, that was very helpful. Because in a place like Madison, Wisconsin, that considers itself to be woke, for most of the time, our white friends are trying to talk us out of our experiences because they can't fathom that they live in a world where people they respect would be treated that way. So rather than leaning into it, a lot of them will try to explain out of it. The way I tried to explain sexism out of, my wife, when she was explaining how she's treated at the car dealership, to one day I caught myself and said, how insensitive to try to make her feel that that's not true. When I used to sell cars in another life, and that's exactly what men say about female customers. And so, but it was hard to accept that was the world that my wife and my daughter and my mom would live in. So rather than just leaning in and feeling it, I tried to scrub it clean. You all didn't do that. First, there might have been slight occasions, but these are also people you all knew. So it wasn't like there was a lady downtown, there was a man at the airport. Like when I had some of my experiences, you all knew exactly who those folks were, and you never shushed us. You listened and you encouraged us on how to pivot and keep going. But I have to tell you, in the whole cross-cultural work, I don't expect my non-Black friends to feel everything I feel or be able to completely relate. But to the extent they can just listen and absorb it, that goes so far. And for me, that's when I realized, all right, these folks may love the project and the concept, but these folks care about us. And it's funny. I know why I had trouble remembering that, Amanda, because that was kind of a painful memory. And as soon as you started talking, I could see it again, and I started getting pissed a little bit inside thinking, that's right, they did. I'm going to invite him to the center so he can come and see. Maybe he'll do my lawn someday. But the walking in our shoes and learning and leaning in was really important. And I know that might just seem like a small thing, but it really isn't. It really, really isn't, because a lot of times it's like, I think about Monsters, Inc., where the little girl is trying to say that there's something under her bed or in the closet. And they're like, no, there's nothing. But, we're watching it, so we know that there really is. It feels like that. But for you all to lean in and listen in this wonderful community took some of the burden and some of the sting out of experiencing those things away. And I'm just curious, as you listened, not fixing it, but as you listened, I'm curious if you had any inkling that absorption of what we were saying was that meaningful to us, to Francis, Leleda, myself, and others.
I think the hardest part of the story that you have to tell, one of the hardest parts, Reverend G, is that how, yes, I could anticipate some of how important it was, but how easy it was in this project. Not how easy the work was, it was hard. But the natural comfort level of the players with each other and with the subject matter. If you told the story to somebody, they would say, boy, it must have been really kind of difficult racial things to deal with. And it wasn't. And I attribute much of that to you and your amazing cross-cultural skills. But also, the people that were in the heart of it share values that are real values for all of us as a starting point. And it was very adult. I didn't get into any ego competitions with people. We had jobs. We know how to do our jobs. We're good at our jobs. And we just we might make a mistake for sure, but everybody does. And it was so culturally easy to deal with what we had to deal with. And I got a sense from what you're saying, you had that similar experience in reverse with dealing with white allies. But when we were on the project together, everybody was very aware of race, right? Which is a good thing to keep in the front of your mind, but not uncomfortable about being aware of what we're working with, if that makes sense.
It does.
I think that's a very hard psychological story to tell because people have trouble hearing it the right way.
And I think we found that space was helpful for us to say what we didn't understand or hadn't experienced or weren't aware of. And it was helpful for us to be able to explain what we were aware of, because we felt very comfortable with you all, but we were coming up against some really weird crap out there, like that conversation. So we would come being aware, and there were moments where I thought, can we really do this in this community? If in order to get to the donor, I've got to deal with the landscaper. And in another setting, it's going to be the receptionist, or it's going to be the doorkeeper. Those became very real for us, and I don't.
But Alex, you're very direct about your feelings on these things. You have a gift of speaking directly to me, for example, just my personal experience about racism, and I don't feel attacked. I feel like I'm interested, right? And it's relevant, but it's a gift, and that opens up an environment where people can be direct and want to learn. I mean, that was for me an opportunity to learn how it is to be black in this community, and the nuances of that were powerful and very, and I worked on justice issues my whole career. So I thought I knew something about this. I completely changed how I viewed race relations in our community. And I came in as a critic. I mean, I did a lot of work saying this community is really a mess on that issue, and it's still, I came out the other end changed. So, and part of it though was just the people that you drew in were adults, and took each other's point of view seriously across both racial divides. For sure. Anyhow, it's a hard story because it's unusual, But that was a remarkable experience of comfort.
It really was. I agree. And I think, Alex, one of the things I appreciated about working on the project so much was you absolutely would tell me, Amanda, I think we need to think about this a different way. Or what about if we talk about it this way because of X, Y, and Z? So, I certainly wasn't perfect and I had things to learn, but I think we had a level of trust where you knew I was truly trying to understand and learn, and also knew that I knew I could never completely understand, right? And just really respectful. And then you were always respectful and kind about thinking about things and helping me understand things in a slightly different way. But I think that what made our team and overall this project work is such a high level of trust.
Absolutely.
We all trusted each other because I actually did sometimes feel a little uncomfortable. This was some of this was new for me. And I also realized that we all understand and say trust has to be earned, but I think that's so true when you're talking about race relations is, of course, you're not automatically going to trust me. Of course, the Black community is not necessarily going to trust me, even if Alex G says, this person is our friend, it's okay. And so for me, there were absolutely many times where I was the only white person in the room and I understood I had to build some trust. And that sometimes was not always easy. And, I might say, that's interesting that person just said it to me that way. But we had to build a level of trust.
Did.
And when we did that, we did amazing things together. Like $32 million later, but also really strong lifelong relationships, I think.
And friendships.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I think one of the things early on, too, that I would add to this is a layer where, remarkably, we almost immediately settled on the rules, on the boundaries, I would say. Example, the design of the content in the center is for the Black community.
Right.
People are invited into this project by Reverend G. I don't go around, and I'm really in one of the core people in this, and I'm not going around inviting my friends. Everything goes through Alex.
Was really different.
Yes.
That was really different for me.
And it was like, okay, that's an easy border. We respect that one. It keeps a lot of crap out of the room. And then, it's like our listening groups, our visioning groups, all Black.
Yes.
And because I was at the time a strategy director, I did not go to any, but I listened to all.
Yes.
Because they were all taped. And to listen to the Black community interact with people of all walks of life.
Yes.
But not be in the room, but listen, it was amazing.
Yes.
Everybody,
so glad we recorded those.
Everybody was engaged. And there was no stepping back because I'm talking, so-and-so's a professor and the other one's a doctor and I'm just whatever I am. Nothing. No, people were involved. And when I thought we were going to build a place early on now where great Black artists would come and people would come and watch them in their plays, for example.
Right.
Immediately, everybody in these groups said, we're not going to do that. We're going to write the plays. We're going to build the sets.
We're going to direct the plays.
We're going to include the people working on history into what we're thinking here. We're going to act in them. We're going to direct them. That's what we're doing in this center. It's like, wow, this center is more alive than I thought could be possible. And it was because, I'm telling you, every person that addressed that issue in different groups, in the envisioning groups, they had the same creative instinct. It's like this desire in the Black community there's a story that has to be told here. And people, it's just alive with the energy to be creative. I mean, it is the most creative group of people interacting. And this community didn't get this, all this talent and excellence and amazing.
And we honed those skills and asked those questions.
There you go. And it's like, wow, this is going to come to light. This is going to come to light through this center. And that's what's going to generate the change is the Black excellence that's there already.
Yes.
And now you're going to be able to personally experience this in the broader community, hopefully.
Yes.
And that's going to make a huge difference.
Yes, it is.
And because it was an authentically Black-led project, it seemed the Black community trusted and had that faith and trust in the project, in you as a leader, in a way that absolutely does not happen when it's white-led project for another community.
Exactly. I remember one particular where Laleda was doing a listening session with professional Black women. She started, with the questions, and I remember this woman stopped. She said, "Wait a minute, we're doing this?" Because I think what happens is you turn your cameras off, you're on Zoom, you're sort of listening. I think it took Black people a moment to look around, I call it the Brady Bunch squares or the Hollywood squares, and say, wait, everybody in this room is Black. Because in Madison, listen, I've been here as a professional for like 40 years. It's very easy for someone to say, hey, my daughter's cousin's nail technician's neighbor is Black, and so I think that I should be able to come. Like the what people would go and like their pedigree of what they would experience. That when we said, no, this is the Black community has got to do this. This can't be Black proximity. This has got to be Blackness, as Laleda would say, blickety Black. It's got to be really Black in focus. And our team trusted that Blackness did not mean unprofessionalism. And it didn't mean, some people do, that when they hear that something's Black, they don't know what to think. And so for you all to see that and believe that, and for the Black community to say, wait a minute, wait, everybody on here is Black. Wait, we can, we're doing this. This is for us and by us. Because in Madison, none of us have worked on something like that, of this magnitude in Madison. And it was a game changer in doing that. And it was really wonderful that people got to see and sense it. So I have just loved that. I'm curious if there is a point or something that you can reference that might just say, this is where I felt stretched and changed in the process. We might have already touched upon that a little bit, where I think a lot of people came in with their professional strengths. But I'm curious if at any of the stages, maybe watching the first 300 donors, Amanda, be Black, something maybe you hadn't seen, or Black people showing up in great numbers to speak into this process. Because I had already interviewed over 700 Black people during the Justified Anger process. And then to come into the center process, we had over 100 people in Zoom calls, all recorded about what was going on. And so I'm just curious, as you watched Black influencers follow Black influencers, it's a different story than what's told about Black Madison. That maybe we don't march to the same beat, we don't all work together, where, Rick, you worked in politics. I'm sure you saw white men who didn't get along, white women who didn't get along. But if it happens in the Black community, people think, what the heck is going on? There's no unity. So I guess I'm just watching that when we said we wanted this Black experience, and the 300 Black donors showed up, and then the major Black donors showed up on the tribute wall, and Black people came to speak into this, and Black people came to the groundbreaking, and Black people came on December 2nd years ago when Summit made their $2 million gift that we're standing outside. I'm curious if you just thought, as you watch these different pockets where the Black community was responding to Black leadership and Black innovation, how that looked to you, or how that may have shaped or impacted the way you think about the way the Black community functions or can function.
I mean, I have not seen, I've worked on a lot of projects, 30 campaigns as a consultant, and I mean, I haven't seen that level of giving from the Black community all at once at the same time. You know what I mean? The way that there was just an immediate response.
Yes.
In 2 months, we had 300 Black donors and their honorees give and kick off the Capitol campaign.
Yes.
And that was something really special. And I think a great model for other communities as well. Because I believe that the problem is often Black people are not invited to the philanthropy table.
Right.
And so when you reach out to the Black community and say, hey, we want you at the table. In fact, we want you to kick off this campaign, and you're going to be a part of it every step of the way, from somebody they trust and somebody that they understand is working to support them. They came out in a major way, and that was really inspiring.
I think a companion of that observation, Amanda, is that, yeah, I agree with everything you're saying, but there's a difference in, we had to be very strong in our commitment to brand the project a Black center.
Yes.
Because there
Yes.
was lots of folks out there trying to, maybe the line being that, well, Black community's not that involved. This is just a handful of people who want to do blah,
Exactly.
blah,
The
blah.
Black elite want this.
The usual, whatever. And that, the press conference where Summit had given the money, 100 members of the Black community or so coming to say, this is important. It took the Black community a while, I think, as a broad group, to feel they were going to get out in public and say, yeah, we believe in this center. They weren't sure what I don't know, is this real? Is this going to be a problem? I can't speak for anyone. I'm just saying that we had to create clear messages that this is not about all members of the community broadly speaking. This is about the Black community. And that's the ownership of this center.
Yes.
And it took some time to get it into the press world and the public world and the bigger community. And that's quite different than the immediate reaction in the Black community was strong. But, if people are going to say it in the broader community, that takes a little framing and coaxing. And
Sure.
Yeah.
You pushed to make sure, I alluded to this earlier, but you really pushed to make sure that we didn't go radio silent. And the media carried our story in a way I honestly feel that they didn't for the other projects. In terms of the number of stories.
They were great.
I still get calls saying, can we come and take pictures now? Can we get a sneak preview? But they helped the broader community become aware of what was going on, because we would say, hey, it's time to reach out. So we would, we talked to Amanda and we said, well, maybe we can close out this year with a challenge grant, or we just hit a major, milepost in what we've raised. And we kept finding ways to keep the story in front of people so that it would be a human interest story. So it wasn't like Madison's messed up and a Black group is trying to fix it. Right. We just kept doing this with a sense of hope, and people wanted a win. The world was messed up, and people really wanted a win. Man, I was processing what you said about the Black donors coming through. I was a few minutes late to start the recording because Zebra Dog, who's doing elite environmental designers, they're this great company that does touchscreens and internal marketing pieces. I'm not doing them justice in how I'm explaining this, but they have helped to take our vision and turn it into something very tactile, very touch, display oriented. Like they're just working magic in our space. So I was oohing and ahhing over there. And Mark, who is the CEO and founder of Zebra Dog, said, Alex, take a look at this donor wall. He says, I do these all over the country. I have never, ever seen this many donor names on a wall. And you mentioned that to me. You say, Alex, we have over 1,200
donors and almost 2,000 gifts. A lot of people gave multiple times.
That's just, of course, I don't know that that's unusual, because some of this just feels normalized. Like, oh, okay, good, great. We have 1,200 donors. You're like, no. That's really major. But when he said that to me just about an hour ago, I thought, I've got to pause and take that in. All of the names that are up there is really, really amazing. And I think part of that is attributed to the fact that you two brought your expertise, but you allowed it to be mingled with our knowledge of culture, of context, and community. So, for example, Rick was coaching me on how to talk to people to get to the purse strings. I would say, Rick, I'm a storyteller. So let me get to the purse strings through the heartstrings. Let me tell stories.
I love that comment.
Yeah, and then every story would be different. So it wasn't like I had this canned thing, but I would make sure that I wove in. I'm a Madisonian. My mom came here. I went to Wisconsin. We sing varsity at home. All of these things to keep reminding the community I'm homegrown. But I would tell stories that would help people to realize Oh, he's one of us. He's delivered newspapers. He was a banker. He went to Wisconsin. We have so many things in common that I feel like it helped people to really lean in. But the flexibility, because you could have easily, and this is not your MO, but you could have easily said, hey, I've been doing campaigns, young man, for 50, 60 years. This is how you raise money in a community like this. But to say, okay, let's heartstrings, purse strings, let's do it. $32 million. The purse strings and the heartstrings were all working together. Or Amanda, it was Ray Allen, our board chair, who said, Alex, if we as black people, and Ray is black, if we don't put our money in first, I don't think the community is going to take us seriously. And Ray had run for mayor, decades ago, and he said, I learned this from my mayoral campaign. I put money in first. We did it. We brought together Miss Kirby, Miss Francis, Laleda, a couple of others, and said, all right, we need to get the black community to step up in this black, black community. I forgot what we called it.
The Black Excellence Campaign.
That's right. We had so many names of like those various campaigns. And you're right, in like 2 months, all of these black people just stepped up and said, all right, we hope this is going to happen. But they, people are giving us $2,000, $3,000. But that came from the black community. Like, let's do something different. Let's give money first. And that spoke to the white community to say, well, if the black community is in, they've just answered a question we have. Is this just a small group, or is the black community really about this?
Alex, that it also tied to the highlighting of black women.
Yes.
And their leadership.
Yes.
In the community.
Yes.
And that's a very important dimension in the black community that everyone in the black community knows, but the broader community a little slow to get the picture here on the leadership of black women.
Definitely. And with that campaign,
we very much wanted that to elevate, and they were
absolutely
wonderful.
Right. No, Rick, thank you for reminding us about that. There are so many, just touch points.
Another shout out, if I could.
Sure.
I mean, you mentioned Zebra Dog, but and we're talking about some marketing. Hebing. I'm sure you've shouted out
the
before,
group.
but I have to give them a special notice on all of this because they came in first time they were asked, and they said, we're in for free for as long as you need us. We believe in what you're doing.
They actually offered before I even had a chance to ask. Because I remember Dave Florence said, wait, you working with Rick Phelps and Jim Bauer? Hey, those are my people. We worked on the East Capitol District stuff together.
Right, he said,
I want to be involved. I couldn't believe it. We were sitting 10 feet apart from each other in the parking lot because this is when we weren't wearing masks yet, but we were just sitting far from each other. We sat in the parking lot here, and he said, I'm on board, and they've given, over $600,000 of in-kind services.
Wonderful.
So
really
I want to have that team in for an interview as well as well as the JLA people, because there's so many. Because again, the big thing that I want people to know is being white allies is sort of like saying you're charming. If people say that they have charm, they probably don't. And if people call themselves allies, they probably aren't. I was talking with someone who said, people like me who've done the work, and then said some of the most insensitive racist stuff that I've heard in a long time. And I corrected them, and we're friends. I corrected them. I said, but I know you know this because you've done the work. He was like, oh, Alex, you son of a... So I won't put you all in that space to call you, to have you call yourselves allies. That's why I'm having you on the show, because I'm putting you in that space. Because there are a whole lot of people who say that they're allies because they give money, but they don't necessarily have meals with each other or know what each other's doing. Right. Or like there's sometimes, Amanda, where I'll see you hugging Gregory before he goes to school, and I have flashbacks of hugging my mom before I went to school.
Yeah.
Or you two will go camping or something. I'll say, Amanda, he's gonna remember that because my mom came to my track meet, so she taught me how to fish. And you're making these memories that I'm 60 and I remember those things clearly. That we talk about life. Mm-hmm. Remember we were at the AC and we were talking, and Laleda made some comment that with her breast cancer diagnosis, she needed some place to come to not focus on that. But she's also talked about how so much healing with white women happened on this project. With you, Amanda, with Caroline, with some of the team members from Zebra Dog, Emily, one of the architects. But she said specifically, Rick, to you, Al, and Jim, that having white men be so respectful of her as a black woman and as a leader, what an impact that has had on her prognosis and her health. That's allyship. Allyship is not like wearing, a clenched black fist on a T-shirt or throwing a Juneteenth party or naming all the black friends you know. True allyship is when you show up for people and people leave better and stronger. And so I need to thank you all for that. Again, this is not about you saying, hey, I want to come on your show and talk about being an ally. You guys probably thought I was going to talk about the center and the grand opening. I threw you for an okie doke because we could talk about the center, but I really want to talk to you two about you two.
Well, I in keeping with the last thing we talked about just now, discovering Leleda was one of the gifts of my involvement. Leleda and I had worked together in sort of a fashion for a number of years.
She was a social worker when you were county exec.
Yeah. She ended up with Joining Forces for Families. Right. But I didn't realize who Leleda really was until she joined us, I think, with some of the initial meetings with the mayor and governor and whatever.
You and Jim brought her on board when I was on vacation. I came back and found out you guys had handpicked Leleda. I did not do. That's my sister, but I did not pick.
She's
Jim
a
and
force,
Rick picked
man.
her.
She was impressive, and she had, when she talked, she had something to say in
Yes,
these groups.
she did.
And you don't want people that, talk too much or whatever in a kind of a defined meeting with a policymaker. Whoa, she hit home run after home run. I'm going, who is this Leleda?
That's right. And Rick, you made a point. You were very, and when I say dogmatic, I don't mean this negatively or pejoratively, but you would say, we're going to meet with the mayor, and the mayor's a woman. We're going to meet with this elected official. We can't show up with all black men. We can't show up we can't show up with all white men. We can't show up with all white women. And so who's coming? Who's going to represent? Because we cannot do this. And you were really on point on making sure that we had, and not representation for the appearance of it, but for the effectiveness.
Oh yeah,
of it.
Definitely.
And that was really, really, really important. So I'm going to ask you all a question that might sound odd, but in light of what I said about calling yourself an ally is like saying or suggesting you're charming, not coming from a perspective of where you're a self-proclaimed ally, but just as a professional in the community, for people who think long and hard about what it takes or things that you can or should do to step into spaces where you begin to build cross-cultural relationships, I'm just curious if you have any ahas that you'd want to share. And if that puts you in an awkward place and you don't want to come across like sounding like an expert, again, that's not what I'm asking. I'm just curious if you'd feel comfortable just saying, for people that are listening and have thought about how they respond to an invitation to be in cross-cultural space, maybe they backed away for fearing that they're going to do something or say something wrong. I'm just curious if you have just any encouragement for people who may have an opportunity through their work lives to cross into whatever that crossing into is. I'm just curious if you have any insight that you'd want to share.
One technique that I would suggest is a small part of this maybe is the cadence of how you interact and you talk.
Great point.
Take a breath, pause a little. Don't do your usual, because I'm always jumping on top of what other people are saying, and I'm speaking too quickly and blah, blah, blah. But I found it very helpful to just wait, Rick, and listen to what's being said, and then react. And I think that's a helpful trait in that kind of environment.
Very helpful.
Yeah, I was also going to say listen, but in a slightly different context. So first of all, I hope people do have the chance to be in those spaces, because that's only how we're going to grow as a society, right? Is if we come together and we share and we learn from each other. And it sounds, kind of trite, but it's just so important. And I think listening and not assuming that you are woke, or what to say, or you should know what to say. Like, just kind of be in that space and listen, and understand that there's always going to be things to learn. And I think, again, I said it before, but it just comes down to a level of trust. Building trust takes time. and it means that you treat people with respect. I truly believe if you treat someone with respect, you're authentic, you're caring, they will return that back to you.
Yes.
And just be honest with yourself and with others.
Definitely. That's really good advice coming from the two of you. And I'll just say to you both, but particularly to our listeners as we wrap up, traditionally, when people have thought about how we build better race relations, we think about quotas. People typically think about that to show that they're truly woke, they'll want to hire someone or get people on their board, but not really look at how they as individual or business leader has been changed or transformed. And so, like, even if you never hire someone from a cross-cultural perspective, Amanda, I think the relationships you built, or looking at how we did the Blacks for Excellence campaign, or some of the things that we did to put a slightly different spin on fundraising, that if it positions you to think differently as you're working with another diverse group and that opportunity comes, that's really more important than just having a decorated staff who aren't necessarily awake or helpful. I think to the extent that you've learned strategies or see things differently or have learned a professional flexibility because it works, not just because it's Black focused, but it's because, like, we have 33 million reasons to know that this worked, and we raised that money together, that I think that that's really important. So I want listeners to understand it's not just who you hire or who you put on your board or the clients you have, but it's thinking differently and more broadly in a way that just helps your business or your organization function differently, because it's really it's a melding of at least two different worlds or realities. And I feel like you both brought your experience and your professionalism to the table, but you allowed it to be flavored. And we brought our experience and cultural insight, but we allowed it to be flavored with how we go about things and how we talk about things. And I think that that's how we know that we're changed and that we can take what we've learned here to other places. You know, for example, I was in New York recently to make a presentation about the center. But as we were talking, I realized it was not the right moment to pull out my iPad and show a presentation, because I could say something based upon what we had just experienced that painted a much better picture, and that I would send the slides as a follow-up. Well, that particular donor wrote me a note and said, I'm really looking forward to partnering with you in building programs. But I know that I need to raise money, but I've also been taught by you, Amanda, how do you read the moment? How do you sense the moment? And part of that's mine. Like, I had already gotten to the heartstring, didn't want to mess up anything by trying to get to the purse string too soon. So I kept talking because it was a moment to really lean into the heartstring. But having that cultural sensitivity, but the true fundraising skills to make a decision that was the right decision, those aren't necessarily skills that I would have had prior to this process. So that's how I take part of what I've learned from working with you all into other places and other spaces. And I think that works. That really works both ways. Well, I'm sorry that we're out of time, because this is something that's really important. We can talk about this so much. But my special guests have been Amanda White and Rick Phelps. We've been working together for the past several years, and I can't believe that on May 6th, we're going to open up the Center for Black Excellence in Culture for an open house for our ribbon cutting, for our official opening. I mean, like, we're still a ways out. Right. And Amanda, we have like how many people registered so far?
Oh, like 700 or something. Yeah. Get ready.
Yeah. We don't even have enough space to do that. So that's why it's going to be like an open house, moving people through the space. But we had like 500 here for the groundbreaking. And then others in the snow for hoisting the last steel beam. And now we get to open the doors so that the community can walk through it. And we've done this together, and I couldn't be happier and more pleased.
One thing that has been a big eye opener for me is when I walk into a space in general in Madison, it's often a white space. I walk in as a white woman who looks like the girl next door. I'm very used to people just automatically trusting me.
Yes.
Right. And so when I said that sometimes this was uncomfortable here early on, is because when I then walked into a meeting or a space when you weren't there, but was with a small group of Black folks who didn't know me,
Yes.
different situation, like different experience, right? Everybody was so nice, but I realized that I had to earn their trust because of the experiences that the Black community has had.
Yes.
They're not necessarily going to trust me right away.
Right.
And that is completely understandable. And so I think that's something for people, for white folks to understand working in these spaces is it takes time and love and caring for mutual trust.
Yes, it does.
And then when you have that, you can do incredible things together.
That's a great note to end on, Amanda. Thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate the both of you being here. And it's so interesting, even though I did not want to meet or work with Amanda, I keep renewing her contract. We got a couple more millions of dollars to raise for program. So it took me a while, but I came around. But no, we got some exciting things to do right after grand opening so we can continue to bring the community around a beautiful programming that's really shaping up. So thank you both for being here.
Black like me. Black like me.
I just want to let people know that we want you to do something with this story. This episode, you know, people that are wrestling with what it means to be an ally, who want to know that it is possible and want to know, you know, in my line of work as a pastor, we talk about, you know, letting others speak of your good. And I think that that's what I want to do in this sub series, that I want to bring my white allies to the table and speak of their good, because we're going to promote Black excellence every day, all day. But I also want to promote the allies who wanted to help us promote that. And so please share this, write a comment, send it to friends, repost it on your social media and whatever you got out of listening to this. I'm fortunate enough to be sitting in the studio with my editors and engineers, Ariana and Eli. And so they make this sound real pretty and nice for you all to listen to. To all of the listeners who have been following me for 200 plus episodes or for the past several years, I really appreciate you. Special shout out for those of you that have clicked the Patreon link, who realize that you can financially support what we're doing for as little as $2 a month. And so there is absolutely no good reason I can think about to not click that link right now and to become a part of that team, because that helps us to continue to bring this high quality program to you as often as we do. Thank you, everyone, for making this podcast not only worthwhile, but such a highlight in my life and in my career. This is just really amazing. So have a great day and lean into what you heard today and become a part of the change that you really want to see. Have a great day, and thank you for being a part of Black Like Me with Dr. Alex G.